I'll call the meeting to order. It's just after 5:30. We're going to skip over a couple of things on the agenda and move right to the water tank siting. Weston and Sampson delivered us a report last month, and we're going to go right into a review and discussion of the report.
And I talked with Sam Kenny earlier today, and I think to kick it off, in addition to what's written in your report, which I think was very well done and very spelled out, Sam does have an update with the U.S. Forest Service and also the state lands on conversations he's had and where they're at, because on two of the options, we would be on U.S. Forest Service property, and on the other one, obviously in the Route 3 corridor, we would be on looking to work on state, and now it looks like federal land. So I think, Sam, if you want to start the conversation on with that, that'll bring everybody up to speed on where you're at right now.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Butch, and thanks everyone for inviting me here tonight and for listening to the update. I'll start with Forestry Service. So the U.S. Forestry Service did send a representative to the site on April 29th. They looked at both the existing Loon Village water storage tank site, as well as I believe it's alternate 2B in the report, the proposed one up behind the water plant, but onto Forestry Service land. Have not heard any formal determination from them on their thoughts. They did reach out to me, I believe it was last Monday, and asked me some more follow-up questions, primarily just about the intent of the projects and how they would work with the town system and what benefit they would have to the town overall. So I answered that, kind of strictly from an engineering standpoint. But the hope is they were going to deliberate further on their side and hopefully reach out again in the near future. And at that time, would invite them to have a conversation, primarily with the town. Obviously, we're happy to attend as well, but primarily with the town, just to get your feedback and let all parties discuss amongst themselves. So that's the Forestry Service update. To expand a little bit further on the existing Indian Head tank site up on Route 3 by Franconia Notch State Park. The park is located not only on state land controlled by DNCR, or Division of Natural and Cultural Resources, I think it is. It's also within limited access right-of-way, Route 3. So New Hampshire DOT would be involved with any further use or consideration at that site. Those two entities have their own processes to deal with if you're going to be using their land. They're not horribly difficult to deal with, though they can be time consuming. The thing that we learned throughout this process is that the Franconia Notch State Park, since construction of the water tank, has been encumbered by what's referred to as the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is a federal program and basically brings in federal requirements and the National Park Service for any considerations of using that site in the future. And I'm frankly just going to quote their own words here, because I think they say it best. And it says, basically this process is, quote, very complicated, time consuming and expensive process involving the town finding and paying for suitable replacement land, as well as all associated costs. So that's a pretty strong statement. Nothing is impossible. We're happy to look into requirements and what that process looks like further if the town, desires, but I think that's the state's own words, and I think it carries some too for how they do their own process and requirements for with that spot. So those are the two updates which referred to.
And then I felt any questions you had on the report itself, Ken or Sam can chime in.
All right, was there anything in the report that you wanted to talk about, or should we just go right looking at the final recommendations?
I guess up to you. I would generally, in extremely brief summation, the recommended spot, piggybacking on the further or the past storage assessment that we completed for you guys in the fall and presented in October, I think it was. We had identified the Loon Village area as the area with the highest overall water storage deficit. And basically, through prior discussions with the town, have kind of focused our efforts on that pressure zone. Also, the concept of installing a PRV between Loon Village and Main pressure zones that would hydraulically link them and allow any storage constructed in Loon to also service your main pressure zone, primarily downtown and along the Kank. So through this process, we looked primarily at the Loon Village siting, and ultimately what the report says is that the site up by the water plant and on U.S. Forestry Service land is the overall preferred alternative, or when considering all of our criteria, what we viewed as the best option to recommend to the town to pursue.
Just just because I don't understand it, but maybe there's others. The original design at South Peak, the approved master plan, had the developer building a tank on the developer's property. And you looked at that as an alternative, but determined that building a tank at a higher elevation on Forest Service land would better provide the town, the whole town, and that development with both potable water and fire suppression. Is that an accurate summary?
It is. So I believe the plan set for that tank was from like 2008, and the intent of that project at the time was they were looking to construct a tank really with the sole intent and purpose of serving the South Peak pressure zone. So that spot works for their intent at the time, which was serving just South Peak. The concept of alternate, 2B as referred to in the report, is if you slid that proposed location further uphill to a higher elevation, then you could construct a tank that serves the town's Loon Village system grade line, but also serve South Peak as well at kind of a reduced, pressure from there. Sort of hitting two birds with one stone. The reason why that concept doesn't work as well of building a tank to serve Loon Village on that developer land, not on the Forestry Service land, is it can be done, but basically only in one fashion, and that's with a 120-foot or taller tank. You're pretty much limited at that point in your styles of construction, almost exclusively to like an elevated steel spheroid. So it would be a very noticeable structure extending very high above the tree line, and you basically only have one option in how you approach and construct that. So it just limits the town's flexibility and kind of gives you an option that may not be desirable.
Okay, and as part of the construction that has taken place back in 2000, whatever, 6 through 8, the developer put in some underground piping towards that site. Is that still usable with the new location?
Basically, yes. There would have to be another look at what the original intent was, what is there on site now, and just the physical location of that spot is kind of highly advantageous to you in that it sits pretty much in the core of that South Peak pressure zone, your Loon Village pressure zone, and not far away is also your main pressure zone. So it is a very ideal location for linking a lot of things hydraulically. Some work would have to be done to just make sure that everything basically works copacetically and you're not creating any hydraulic loops where things are kind of just going in a circle. But the infrastructure that's there is basically able to accommodate it. There would be new water main required to connect the site. There would be a new pressure reducing valve required to serve South Peak. But anything that's there now doesn't automatically become useless using that site or slightly locating it further uphill.
And how does water get up to that tank? Is it the current pumps that are in the water treatment plant, or would there be new pumps as part of the project?
To be determined exactly how it works, but right now your Loon Village grade line is met by the Loon Village pumps, which are now located in that South Peak pumping station on Crooked Mountain Road, I think it is.
And the upgrading of the South Peak pump station, once a tank was built, it's clearly stated that pump station and the associated lines would be turned over to the ownership of the town, and it would be used exclusively to fill that tank. So that was your question.
Okay,
Yes,
so the pumps that fill the Loon Village tank are currently in that South Peak booster pump station,
correct,
and the new pump that would feed a new tank would also go into that building.
correct.
And everything that's in there now feeding the high pressure zone would become useless because.
It would just, it wouldn't become useless, but it would just be routed, as I understand it, and Nate's on, but it would be routed from that pump station to the tank. The tank would then
Feed.
gravity feed everything now that's right. So that's pretty simple view, but that's how it would
Okay,
end up, yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't need to. Right now, they utilize a jockey pump that just supplies pressurized water to Hemlock.
Yeah.
With this tank installed, you wouldn't need that, so that would go away.
That would
And the
go-
two pumps that are already there possibly could be upgraded, determining whatever size tank we put up there to fill it.
Frankly, you may
Is that
not need
correct,
any
Sam?
of the pumps that serve South Peak at all, because the Loon Village grade line is your existing Loon Village system grade line is above the proposed South Peak grade line. So by filling the Loon Village tank with your Loon Village pumps, you're already over the required pressure that you would have. So you can actually go the other way and install a pressure reducing valve back down. And then you don't have a need to use the domestic pumps really at all.
Even
Perfect.
better.
okay. Tamara or Jack, any other questions on the Loon Village zone or the South Peak zone?
Just
None
one-
from me.
Just one quick question. I assume the size of the tank is taken into consideration the build-out of South Peak and other potential build-outs that are on the board here in town as far as hotels, et cetera, go?
Yes. So the exact tank sizing, I guess, has not yet been determined in a final. Before kind of proceeding with an actual design, we would finalize all the assumptions with the town, make sure, exactly what you just stated. We're aware of everything that is in front of you for expansion, all of that. I can say right now, for the purposes of this report and what we had modeled using your hydraulic model, is a 750,000 gallon tank. And that was based off basically the past storage deficit identified from the storage assessment last fall in Loon Village, which was about 400,000 gallons. And then roughly 300,000 gallons from what the proposed South Peak tank size had been. So kind of combining those and then throwing a small contingency on top of it. So that was the process that we got to for the sizing used in the report, but before actually kind of moving forward and constructing the project as well, we'd make sure there's full buy-in with you guys, just to make sure that all the assumptions are agreed upon.
2B is your recommendation? to meet those needs at the current time?
Yeah, with some small, contingency and eye to the future. We never want to design something that the town's going to hopefully use for 50, 60, 100 years, and kind of be stuck only with the blinders on in the moment. We want to make it so that it's functional for you long term, but we also don't just make it overly large because we can, because then you go the other way and you can have water quality issues with just not turning it over.
Thank you.
All right, then maybe we should move on to the Indian Head Zone.
I can,
Certainly
yeah,
less, I guess, less options available
I think
in that
the
area.
key, the big thing, and I spoke to Sam briefly about it, I think the big surprise to me is that the water conservation, whatever the title is, that takes us into the federal and the Park Service, National Park Service, is a huge game changer. That undoubtedly, I don't think they're exaggerating when they say this is a long drawn out to get anything permitted on National Park Service. And I think they're tied in by monies and grants, probably, Sam, that the state took to develop that. Even though White Mountain National Park is not part of the National Park Service, I don't believe in total, but any monies for certain parts that were, and for us to buy land, we would have to, if we wanted 2 acres of land, we would have to find 2 acres of land, that they were interested in, and then make that purchase, and then spend the time negotiating a land transfer, swap, or whatever they want to call it. So not impossible, as Sam said, but as we all know, just dealing with the Forest Service, although we got through, we've dealt, we pretty much know, but that in itself is, so it's a challenge, but not impossible, but going forward.
So when we were originally talking about this, just among people here in town, we were looking at the site of the Boyce Brook,
Damn.
where the dam is, and taking that down. From your siting report, it looks like that elevation is significantly lower than what it needs to be at the dam site.
That's basically what we had kind of conveyed to the town early in this process, kind of when we came on board, roughly this time last year, is that the Boyce Brook site is not ideally located for an Indian Head tank that would be a gravity style tank, i.e. what you have right now, and you would pump into it and flow would come out, via gravity. The reason being, same concept is over by the water plant that we talked earlier. The only way to pull it off would be to have like 120, 130 foot tall tank, which is just difficult in itself to construct. And also the location is not particularly accessible. And just construction of a road, crossing the PEMI at that location, all of those items, it's just the overall project cost could easily triple before you even get to the tank itself. So that's kind of what we had said at the time is, anything can work, but is it your best and most viable option? At the time, we didn't think it was.
And probably, I would dare say it probably still is not a financially feasible option, or at least if money's no object, it's feasible, but
Well, that it looks like from your siting map that up behind the Boyce Brook is just much higher than the dam, and as you said, we can either call it inaccessible or economically infeasible to access. Anything north of that is either up behind Indian Head on their land, but again, so far back from that river and require a river crossing that it seems like anything north of that on that side of the river would just be prohibitively expensive to access. And going down the other side of the river on the siting map, we got the existing tank there, but everything else in your acceptable zone is, immediately south of that is either on the interstate, which is out of the question, or is on the other side of the interstate, which would again mean construction and piping that involves going under the interstate. And if you want to talk about something that's going to be very complicated, very expensive, and very time consuming, I would guess that process would be worse than the state process. So that really doesn't leave us much for options in that zone. Other than going through the long, expensive, time-consuming process of locating something up at Indian Head. Unless we found a non-tank solution, which I'm wondering if something like that, or a solution that might involve a smaller tank at a lower elevation with pumps. I think we have proven over the last 60 years or more that the Indian Head tank has sufficient capacity to supply Parker's Motel, the landscaping company across the street, Indian Head, 3 residences, and that's all that's above the Boyce Brook area. It's the fire suppression storage that's lacking. Is there a solution that would involve, say, a smaller tank up there that the fire department could draw off of, or maybe a permanently installed pump up there that would pump a significant volume of water up the hill?
And it could be potable water that could be replenished, in a fire situation, could replenish
From Shadow Lake
from Shadow Lake or
or the Pemmy.
or just replenish the potable water system. Or something like, some hybrid of that, I don't know. But that wasn't included in this look, so.
Right, but I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering for the next step, do we start dealing with this what you called complicated, expensive, and time-consuming process of trying to find land, which is really geared towards the firefighting water component of the system versus, would a dry hydrant at Shadow Lake do that? Or would a small tank and pump system at the bottom of the hill of Boyce Brook do that? Or both of those do that at a far reduced cost?
Or a tank at Wales Tail.
One thing, well, anywhere up there, I mean, I'm not objecting to that, but the pump and system is right at the Boyce Brook pump house. Adjacent to that, I don't know how much land we own there, and I know it's very limited, but could
Well, I was just saying,
we put
I
a
was thinking.
40,000 gallon tank
So
there?
maybe next steps, and we probably have to discuss this, and ideally would just to be a continuation for Weston and Sampson. I would suggest that I think we've got plenty of documentation of what needs to be done on South Peak, Loon Village, and the high pressure zone. So implementation is going to be another decision, but I think we have plenty of data to support that. So maybe for the Route 3 side, we would retain Weston and Sampson. Okay, take the next step, concentrate on fire protection, and what would it look like, and where would it be? It would be a nice next step. And then the town should have all the input for the board to make a decision on, all right, when and how do we address this? That's what I think. I think you've zeroed right in on exactly whether it's we store water, potable water, additional storage for potable water that can be supplemented in with no effects on our potable water system in a fire flow event, or some hybrid of drawing out of Shadow Lake, and then having a separate deal, just which, would not be a hydrant system, would be a trucked layer hoses, and, which could get complicated for the fire department, especially with our current staffing issue. The more hose you lay, the more people you need, and he's got 3 to 5 people currently showing up for fire, so I want to be cautious about that, because those solutions are probably 5 to 10 years out. And to keep the town developing. So I think a next step, in my opinion, would be we just get a proposal from Weston to take that next step. It should be a very narrow focused, the data they have, what would be the next step to provide adequate fire protection on Route 3. Because if we implement what we've clearly defined over here, we'll take care of the fire protection issue as well as domestic water, but just my thought.
Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I want to go back very briefly to your assessment of the siting map, which was absolutely perfect. 10 out of 10. You hit it dead on. The distinction that I'll draw just for the town's consideration is what that map is showing. The elevational band is what is ideal for a gravity storage tank, gravity style storage tank, like all of your existing tanks are right now. There is another option that is available to you, which is the concept of ground, basically construction of a storage tank. The difference being it does not feed your system via gravity. You fill it with pumps, it pumps out. So the advantage of gravity storage is that you're not contained to that narrow elevational band. You could effectively put it anywhere in your pressure zone and it can fulfill the same function. The primary downside and why it's not used as much is that you now have to maintain another pumping system into perpetuity and pay the long-term O&M of doing that. So usually not seen as better than gravity storage for that reason, but it is an alternative that may help you, because you're absolutely correct in saying your options for gravity storage are very limited up there. So I just wanted to amend that, because that very much is something that, and as Butch describes, would be something that we would look at further in our report. The other general concept is, yeah, like you hit on, non-potable fire sources could work, or changing basically how that Route 3 corridor works, and creation of new infrastructure, larger mains, or another pump station to drive water up there to alleviate some of the concerns that you have now. So there are definitely a couple options available to the town, and probably do merit some consideration or investigation.
Would it be a fair assessment to say that the path forward on the Loon Village side is much clearer and defined to move forward with it more immediately, and the Indian Head is going to require more creative solutions and study and before we determine which way to go?
I think that's a fair assessment.
So, I mean, I'm from reading this and then this discussion, I'm thinking that the way to go is to try to move forward with something over here. South Peak, Loon Village area. And look, for Indian Head, look at whether it's a dry hydrant or a tank that's underground and needs to be pumped into and pumped out of, or a tank that's exclusively for firefighting and it's not potable water and it's only hooked up to, how many fire hydrants are above Boyce Brook? I know there's one at the very southern part of, there's one at the very northern end of Parker's Motel, one at the very southern end, and there's one at Indian Head.
Two at Indian Head.
Is there two at Indian Head?
There's two there.
Okay, so there's four fire hydrants north of Boyce Brook.
Probably. No, there's one just south of the pond where we've had a couple of water breaks.
Water
main
breaks. There is a hydrant right there.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
And then there's, I think that's all that's on that line.
And the next one is down by Not True Condos,
On the other side of the road.
on the other side of the road.
Would the board be willing to have Weston and Sampson work up a scope and fee for that next phase of research for Route 3 that we can just take a look at on what they would charge us to move forward with that, and we can look to see if we can find the money or not. But at least a scope and fee, and it would lay out what they would plan to do, so the board has that knowledge, we have that knowledge, and we can determine whether we want to, at least, then you'd have a package that would be good for several years on what would need to be done. And I would suggest that would round out the entire town. And everything would be predicated on maximum build out of the community, being very conservative and just engineer it on over development, even if it doesn't come to be or something along that line.
I think that should be done. I'm just wondering if we should focus on
Okay,
obtaining the site, working with the Forest Service, working on the solution over here that we know what we're going at.
Sam, I think I know the answer to this, but if we negotiate a site with the Forest Service, those are usually, once negotiated, the site's in perpetuity. There's usually no time limits on us using the site. It's just going through the process, correct?
Like all good engineering answers, it depends. But in general, yes. I mean, any negotiation can kind of be on whatever terms, and if that's the term that the town wants to obtain, then I would think the Forestry Service would be amenable based on their own things that they would look for. I mean, the town does have some advantage in that you've already completed this process one time, at least with the construction of the existing Loon Village tank. So there is, some level of precedent that you guys can fall back on. But yeah, I think it would depend on having kind of clear goals for what you want out of negotiation with them, and just trying to reach an agreement that gives you those goals.
Okay, yeah. I feel pretty confident that if we got through that process, then the Forest Service probably wouldn't have, as long as we spell it out as we go through the process of when we actually did the tank, they wouldn't put any time constraints on us to put it in. It's just, they want to know what they're giving up and what's going to be there. We wouldn't be able to change what goes there, but that's my guess.
Well, I mean, my thought, again, from reading this and having this discussion, is that we focus on the Loon Village zone, the 2B location just uphill from the South Peak site, and move forward with that. Put the Indian Head sort of on hold, and maybe once we get through the permitting and engineering process of the part of the South Peak tank, we then focus on Indian Head, rather than trying to have too many irons in the fires. We're not gonna solve all of our problems in 1 year anyway. Let's focus on the one that has a clearer path to success.
Okay.
And is a higher priority based on the report that Weston and Sampson gave us earlier.
Okay,
So if that's the case, Sam, I assume that the next step in the process would be a proposal from your firm to take the next steps with the Forest Service, the
Siting.
documentation of our needs, the more exact siting, et cetera.
So yes, in the extreme immediate short term, probably the next domino to fall is Forestry Service actually needs to reach out to the town and render their opinion of their initial walk, which I'm not exactly sure the timeline. Their initial assessment took about a month. It's been 2 weeks since they've been out there. I would hope that maybe within this month, they will be ready to reach out and kind of say something. But why I bring that up is just getting their initial opinion on, yes, this is going to be acceptable based on, these conditions. Or if for some reason their initial stance is that they don't want to give that. Just knowing the opinion is probably the first thing we have to do before we can set the specifics. So I'm happy to reach out to them and try to get a better idea on that timeline. But I think that really is kind of the first thing that needs to happen.
yeah, and I think it might be good when we next reach out, probably to the forest supervisor, maybe Sam, you and I, and probably Nate, we could make it the three of us at the meeting and give her, I think, a sense that we are on board with this and we want to work with them. And I have some thoughts on the Boyce Brook too. I think to sweeten the pie, they do want to see the Boyce Brook Dam gone, and we might be able to use that. We were going to do that for them anyway, so we might keep that in play. And I think they'd be very happy about that. So, because we don't need it. We don't need it. They don't want it. So we can go from there. So why don't you set it? Why don't you set it up, Sam? And we'll all meet whenever you think it's opportune.
I'll reach out to them, see where they are in their review process. I mean, I can meet anytime. It's more just when they're going to be through. I know on their side, they usually bring in like 4 or 5 different specialists. So it's just trying to overlap all their schedules. It's the ologist problem of there's a lot of people to render an opinion. So it's chasing all of the people until you have all of the opinions.
I know they have, once a year, they have I believe it's a New England wide roundtable. It's called their small projects group, and all this stuff is usually presented at that time. And I don't know when that is or if we've missed it. I learned that through the rehab of the Loon Pond Dam and the bat study. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, awesome.
Well,
Thank
Sam,
you.
thank you for presenting this and answering our questions. And I think we have the next steps, at least the next one step cut out, and we'll regroup after that to see where we go.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I mean, to get together kind of what the next steps are after Forestry Service kind of weighs in isn't a significant amount of time. It's just really getting their initial opinion is kind of the first thing that answers, all the other questions. So, but thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, Ron or Nate, did you have any questions or anything before we?
Not right now.
No? All right, Sam, thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Good point. Okay.
Nate has something.
Okay,
Well, Nate, yeah, go ahead, Nate, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Nate did that.
yeah,
Don't mind me taking just a few minutes while I'm right here. I'd like to go over a couple of changes that I'd like to make to the fee schedule at the solid waste. We recently had all of the like fluorescent bulbs, batteries, and all that type of things taken away. And I had John and I've been working together on this. We're trying to streamline everything that comes in that we're getting the proper fees for. And some things that we've been taking over the past have been one thing that we want to clean up and make sure that we're getting fees for it, which we haven't in the past, are propane bottles. They actually cost money to get rid of, and we have quite a few. We'd like to clean them up. We're probably going to eat some cost getting rid of them. But for the future, I would like to charge what it costs us to get rid of them. So, and they're actually expensive, believe it or not. The small camp size propane bottles for a camp stove, they cost $2 a piece to get rid of them. The 20 to 35 pound grill bottles, they cost $3 a piece to get rid of those. The 100-pound bottles, they cost $5. So I'd like to make those changes so that we can move on in the future, still collect them from the residents, but collect the fee so that we don't lose our shirt on them. Another thing which I had no idea, smoke detectors cost $12 a piece to get rid of.
It's a sensor, so.
So as people replace those and they bring them in and do what they should do and bring them to us so we can, dispose of them correctly, we should charge the appropriate fee. So if you're all set with that, I'd like to make those changes.
We need to schedule a meeting with Woodstock Board of Selectmen because it is a joint run facility. The Lincoln can't make that decision on their own. It has to be a joint board decision.
In the interim, should we stop collecting those items because they're just building up and they cost a lot to get rid of?
Jane, do you have any idea when Woodstock meets next?
They meet every other week, right, Tammy?
I believe so.
Yeah, so I think they may meet tomorrow night, because they met the week before. I can find out. You want me to email Judy and get you guys scheduled with the joint meeting?
Or Nate could,
ASAP.
present to them just like he just did to you.
Oh,
You
right,
guys.
gotcha. Better yet.
Are they still Zooming or are they in person?
I think they're still Zooming.
So Nate could present to them just like he did to you guys.
Yeah, sure. I will absolutely follow up on that tomorrow.
We probably should be too.
It would be a lot cleaner if we had a joint meeting and decided as a joint board together with the 6 of us.
Okay, that's fine. I just
know
want to
it-
make sure we're on the up and up, that's all.
okay,
Yeah.
hold on 1 second, Jack.
Well, you know what, I'd almost like to make a motion that we approve it, the fee schedule as presented tonight, subject to Woodstock approving same. If Woodstock does not, then it doesn't go forward. Rather than have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting to discuss 5-minute worth of stuff. I mean, Nate's made his point. I fully agree with what he said. It's costing the taxpayers of both Lincoln and Woodstock money. So, why not?
There's one other thing that I'll bring before you, and I have no problem bringing this before both boards as well, and that is disposal of mattresses and box springs. The problem with those are someone can show up with a mattress and they meet the $10 minimum fee, but then over that we charge 5 cents a pound for mattresses. It's costing us more money to get rid of them at that fee schedule. So I checked with surrounding towns. Thornton's getting $10 a mattress and box spring. I believe Plymouth is as well. So the problem is, and what we found last year, Woodward's came in and I think they unloaded like 30 mattresses and box springs. We've just now started to be able to get rid of those. It cost us quite a bit of money because there were so many, we had to put them in a bulky container and Waste Management charges us extra for the bulkies. If we get them, if they're coming in slowly, we can filter them in and lay them on top of the C&D container and get rid of them that way. But Sometimes they don't come in that way. Sometimes we just get flooded with them. And I think just a $10 flat rate would be the best way to go. And like I said, I have no problem presenting that to both boards. That's fine.
What is the current rate for mattresses?
It's the 5 cents a pound off the scale.
Oh, okay, it's by weight, okay. Okay. And you're suggesting do a flat rate of $10 for a mattress and $10 for a box spring?
That's correct. And that also may encourage, say Woodward, say one of these hotels that have 40 or 50 mattresses, it might encourage them to get their own dumpster instead of unloading them all at solid waste. And then another problem we have is you get 30 mattresses stacked up there. We can't get rid of them fast enough at the rate we're doing it. And then they get wet and then they're heavier. And then we just end up losing our shirt on them. So I think that we need to manage it a better way.
Nate, when you get rid of them, or we get rid of them, is it by the pound?
Yeah, everything's by the pound. Everything that goes out of there.
Okay, so I mean, once they're left out to weather, they get wet as hell and they get heavier.
Right, they get more expensive.
More expensive.
So I think all in all, we're gonna win if we charge a little bit more, and we get $10 a piece.
And I think Nate brings up a good point. Nate brings up a good point about hotels and motels. I mean, yep, they pay in taxes, but that is incredible load on a small facility.
And John's done a great job of managing it, and we're starting to get it to a manageable amount now. I think that this is the time that we should look at this, and I agree, Tammy, we should talk to the other board as well.
Yeah, I we just looked, Woodstock meets again on the 18th, a week from tomorrow at 5 p.m. Why don't we see if we can join them via Zoom that night, if the other two board members are available, OJ and Jack. And Nate, in the meantime, you can put something on paper and we can email it over to them so they can take a look at it prior to the meeting.
Yep, I'll get that to Judy tomorrow.
Yep, I mean,
I'll summarize all these.
yeah, we've worked hard over the years to have a good relationship with Woodstock, and I want to continue that. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. This might be a 5-minute decision, but I think the process of making it a shared and open discussion with them has benefited both towns in the past. And if we keep going, and it gives them the chance to ask a question or bring something up that we haven't thought about and let us discuss it right then and there versus them get back to us and us get back to them, et cetera. I'd be available next Tuesday night. Can we request that we be put on the agenda
Yes.
first? And hopefully the last 10 minutes, Nate gives his presentation, we chat about it, vote on it, and on Zoom.
perfect.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Nate, while you're on the phone, I was gonna ask about an update on the water intake pump and drive. Any progress on that?
So yes, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So today was another whole day of working down there with Weston and Sampson, and we've got the new VFD to power the pump, but we've run into another issue with, we think we might have a stuck check valve down in the wet well. So tomorrow's another day. We're gonna get down there and take that apart. We did find that the pump that had failed isn't as catastrophic as I once thought. Actually, what it needs to have done is the wiring is original and it comes factory sealed, and these are submersible pumps. So what had happened is some water had gotten into the wiring and had caused that pump to short, but it didn't cause any major damage. So the rebuild shop said that all it needs to do has been taken apart, have the windings cooked, and new wires put on it, which is a lot less expensive than a $16,000 rebuild. So we're looking better on all fronts. If we can get this check valve straightened out tomorrow, it looks like we'll be up and running with 2 pumps in the hole. So
Wow, excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
really good news. it didn't look too good last week.
Well, I know, that's why I wanted an update. And you had also had problems with the communication system?
Yep.
The antennas, I guess, the antennas.
Yep, we had the radio folks shipped me a new antenna, and we climbed up. Zach got up on the roof. I got up there with him, and we swapped that antenna out, and it works perfectly now. So,
Okay, good.
and then I had him order me a spare antenna, so I'll have that on hand. And he said that'll actually work at all my sites in a pinch. I have a couple antennas that are directional style. This is just a straight, beam, but he said it'll work in a pinch. So I think it'll be good to have it on hand. If we have an issue in the future, I can just pop that one up there, get me by until I get the right one going. So we learned a lot more about how that all works. So.
And Nate, why don't you fill them in on the security system at the solid waste?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, it's all installed, up and running. Works good. I just gotta get John a wireless mouse. I didn't have a chance today as I was running around with our insurance folks from Primex and dealing with the water system, but it's all installed. Works great. He's got a monitor right there. It's the same as what's going on at the Kank. So we're all up and running.
And does that record?
Yep, it records. It's identical to what's at the Kank, and the police can monitor it as well.
Oh, the police can monitor it. All right, good.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks,
Welcome.
Nate. Thanks for hanging around.
Hey, Nate, before you go, we had discussed a few weeks ago about additional parking at the Kank Rec Center. Has anything been done to do a cost estimate on a couple of different options that we had there?
I have not had a chance.
Okay, now when you get a chance.
That's
No,
when things calm down, that's next on my list. I'll start working up both scenarios and.
No problem, Nate. Thank you. I know how busy you are.
Thanks, Nate.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we can go back to the agenda and we can look at the minutes from last week.
Motion to approve them as distributed.
Which ones? May 3rd. Tammy, did you have anything on those?
We have two sets, correct? Which ones are you doing?
I'm doing May 3rd.
May 3rd. I do have a correction, and I printed them from home, so I don't have a numbered thing, but it is on the 3rd page under water infrastructure.
Yeah,
And 3 lines up from the bottom, it says that the public works budget was cut by 20K this year. It should say the water department budget was cut by 10K this year. Because the public works budget was not cut at all. The water department budget was reduced by 10,000.
What page are you on,
line
Terry?
150.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, OJ. Did you get that, Jane?
Was cut by,
It was the water department budget was cut by 10,000.
perfect. Got it.
That's all I had.
Okay, and so are you seconding Jack's motion?
I am. Yes, I did that.
Oh,
I didn't, but that's okay. I will now. Second.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Sign after me. Oh,
Is that signed? All right, and then we have the non-public meeting minutes from May 3rd.
I'll make a motion. We approve the non-public meeting minutes as presented.
a trivial note, but up top it says word session instead of work session.
Oh, did it? No, that's
It
not
says
trivial.
word,
Yeah, we'll
It's
change
not.
that. Thank you.
Good catch.
Oh, okay, that's
That
on the
is.
May 4th.
And
Yeah.
But good, okay.
I'll
That's-
second that motion and as distributed or as amended.
For the May 3rd non-public.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
May 4th, not.
No, May 3rd.
Oh,
Third.
This one you have in
May
your right?
3rd, right, May 3rd, not.
Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right. And then we have the, we change this to work session.
I'll make a motion, we approve the May 4th meeting minutes with, as amended.
Second.
Wait a minute, what do you mean? Oh, as amended because of the work, okay.
Right.
Word, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Okay, and I will abstain because I was not at the meeting.
Perfect.
Oh, Jack needs to sign those first. Is that, what is this
Oh,
from?
wait, no, you don't sign these, that's a drag.
I'm sorry, I handed him the wrong one. This is the May 4th meeting minutes here.
Right. Let me just
I handed you my draft, I was,
May 3rd, so that's perfect. And I have one original. You gave me your draft, but you don't need any more of this. And, right,
all right, so this is the May 4th.
perfect.
So do you have the two of them from
I'm
May 3rd?
missing May 3rd original approved minutes.
Do you have the May 3rd ones, Jack? Okay, right here.
Oh, good. All right, perfect, thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Board of Selectmen's 2021 goals. Tamara, do you have a copy of that?
I do, yep.
Okay, and we said that we were going to review these more than once a year. So we can get down through this list and just see if there's anything that needs to be changed or eliminated or moved up in priority. So we have the water meters and water rates. We agreed to leave that item on the goals list. We really haven't done anything with it. Any comments? We just want to leave that there?
I would leave it there for now.
All right, we have sewer issues, the capacity and town growth, sewer upgrades and funding. I think we're working on a sewer capacity study and I'm anxiously awaiting that, so I definitely want to leave this on the agenda.
Agreed.
All right, the Village at Loon water pipe to the tank feeding Coolidge Falls and Clearbrook. That should certainly stay on the agenda.
Because
I
it's,
think we wanted to see what we were gonna do as far as a new tank, piping, pressure reducing valve, whatever, in that zone. And I think we're on track to do that. Once that gets in process, we may want to give this more priority. Until we get approval for a site and size and engineered tank, I don't see a pressing need to work on this because we don't know if there's gonna be a second tank up there. If for some reason the Forest Service says you have to do it over there and not on the other side of the
I
road.
think it's something to still consider, because even if we don't put a second tank up there, the issue of aging lines and the fact that we fill that
Definitely.
tank through their network
Is,
is not ideal, and the
Right.
town may have to address that in years to come.
right, but if there's two tanks up there, we may need bigger pipes. or
The
different-
the whole thing. yeah.
So I don't want to get into
Exactly.
that project
Yeah.
and then find out, oh, wait,
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
bigger pipes. All right, work on obtaining written agreements and defining responsibilities for the privately operated redistribution systems, PAWS.
Mhm.
Oh, it says it right there, redistribution.
I think that's, again, the Loon Village is probably the biggest confusing system.
Right, and not to their fault. That
Not to their
was-
fault, but just the way it's designed, so that's probably
Yeah.
something that the town in years to come is gonna have to address. Some of the other PORs are more clearly defined, like the Landing, like South Peak. Power lines go right to the border and.
And they
it's
take
a
over.
clear definition, they take over. But up at Village of Loon is no fault of it, it's just a confusing thing, so you probably got, I'd keep that on your list, my opinion.
All right, next one is the process and timeline to resolve water pressure issues and looking at the South Peak tank or an
Yes.
additional tank. We just did that tonight. We're gonna keep that
Yeah.
moving. Main Street crosswalks,
Okay, when we install the last two RFs
yeah,
this year, we'll have completed our obligation to the state to put flashing lights at all of our crosswalks.
okay, so there's two more to do.
Two more to do,
They'll
and
be done this summer.
they're gonna be done this summer, and we've met our obligation.
I thought there was 4 more to do, 2 this year, 2 next.
No, two more sidewalks,
Yeah.
four lights, but two more crosswalks, and that'll,
Oh, perfect. Oh, good.
Actually, other towns have called Nate on how to assemble these, how to go about it.
yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
state's using us as a model of how a plan can over years accomplish it, and so it's come out good, so the last four lights, the last two sidewalks will be done this year, yeah. So I'd keep it on another year.
Yep.
or Whatever, yeah,
Public parking / riverfront parking.
and I think you still want to keep that on your thing
Yeah.
because we're waiting for that cleanup, and that will happen, but keep it on.
Tank rec area parking, we discussed that recently, and we're gonna be taking next steps, making decisions with that. Workforce housing, we decided to leave that on the list, although there's no immediate action items we're looking at. It's certainly something that the town needs to be aware of and keep on working towards
Ron,
it.
did we just have someone in asking,
Peter Marlowe.
yeah,
Yeah,
I guess he publicly, so we can talk, but anyway, he has signed a purchase and sale agreement, I believe, on some land on Route 3, and he was asking questions about affordable housing in that area.
well, I think the biggest change we made was with that zoning that got voted in March, that allows greater density, more similar to a hotel density than a single-family house density for long-term.
So that's the first developer we've had in years that's come in and it has been years that has come in and asked specifically about property that he's purchasing, so. it's-
Butch, you said affordable housing. Was it affordable housing or workforce housing? Because they are two very distinctly different
What?
animals.
Workforce,
Thank you.
All right, obtaining valuable members to join town committees. I want to leave that on there, but I think that we've made some good progress with that.
We got the
With the
trustee.
trustee.
Big one.
I think the budget committee is still down 1, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right, Tammy. We also, not that it's an a board appointment thing, but I want to publicly say we're now looking again for someone to take planning board minutes. Brooke, it's too much for Brooke and she can't do it anymore. She's gonna hang in until we find somebody. So we've posted it. Anybody listening, pay $25 an hour. And it's a crucial, but it takes time, and with her other duties here at town hall, she just advised us she couldn't do it anymore.
Okay.
She-
Those meetings are on Wednesday evenings, twice a month, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, at least twice, and lately they've been meeting more just because of the activity in town, so.
Yeah, we've done that a couple of times, but that's been pretty rare, at least
Yeah.
on my term in the.
Yeah, it's
Usually it's twice a
twice
month.
a month.
And actually, sometimes we've had slow months where it's just been the one.
Yeah.
We're required to have one meeting a
One
month.
meeting a month. Yeah. So,
All right, and then the last thing on here is short-term rentals.
Yes, and I forwarded
You
Samantha
forwarded-
White
Yeah,
with some additional info that I thought was very interesting. We aren't the only ones that were questioning our return on investment. And they've done, it sounds like they've done some work, and so I'm gonna listen in on their presentation and see, they're talking a 90-day return on investment is what they're getting, and that's pretty impressive if it's true. So if any of the board or anybody wants to listen in, that the dates are there, and I plan, and I believe Carol's going. I think I even heard Lisa say she wanted to listen in too.
We saw the piece out of the paper that Ivan Strickon sent to us. Did you see that? Did you look at that?
when was this?
Last week, was it, Butch, that he sent it to us?
Yeah,
Then I did
It
not.
was over in North Conway. It was really very, very interesting looking, because they took it to town hall, in the town meeting, and what the town meeting. As an update also, I did meet finally with somebody from the high school, as I had talked about.
Yeah.
A young teacher who teaches the IT department. He's not the head of it. And his name is Dan Adams, and Dan said he had someone in mind and would get back to me.
Really?
So
That would be a good start
it
for
would
this
be a
year.
good start. So we'll see. I'm waiting.
And yeah, I would certainly encourage you to attend, and if I can, I'm gonna make one. The two of them that was scheduled, they're both the same thing, is that correct?
they are.
Okay.
Two different.
So I can
Different
choose
times.
one or the other.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna try to listen in on that webinar. Any other discussion, or anything we want to add to our goals list? All right, then let's move on to the town manager's report.
Okay. So as you see, the O'Brien Way plaque, just as a update. Mike Dovalock was in to see me, and I, because Jack had spoken to Doug Moorhead in the Interact group. And as a result of that, Mike was put in touch with Doug Moorhead and has since met with the Interact Club, and they are going to fund not only the making of the plaque, but they're going to actually install it on the trail, the path, with a little garden, flower garden and stuff, and do it up to the nines. Mike met with them and gave them a history on Mr. O'Brien, or Captain O'Brien, and I guess it was well received. In fact, I believe the current president of the Interact, one of the students' uncle, I believe it was, based on that presentation, sent a check for $200
Was his
To-
grandfather, yeah.
grandfather or somebody who
Yeah,
served in
Andrew
Vietnam.
Wilson.
Yep, who served in Vietnam and thought that was a noble cause, and so they're well on their way, and so it was pretty impressive. It all worked out good, and actually Doug Moorhead assisted me with ripping a deck off my house, and he was like, whoever sent this our way was incredible, because the kids are all excited about it.
So
So
good.
so kudos to whoever thought of it, Jack or whoever, I don't know, but it worked out well. There is, tonight, we need the board to do a motion to actually include the consumer confidence water report in the tax bills. Annually, if we want to do that, it has to be out of a motion at a board meeting to do that. So the wording is in your packets, the statute that requires it. As you know, we cannot put anything that solicits money other than tax bills in there.
Yep.
But a water consumer report meets the criteria of being allowed to be included in a tax bill. So if you could do that, the wording's there, and we just have it in the minutes in case somebody contests it.
motion to attach that?
Yeah, it's.
I'll make that motion to attach the consumer confidence water report to the spring tax bill.
Perfect.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's not a bill though.
No, we can
That's
put
why we
that,
could do
we can
Water
put that
report.
in, but we
put the
wanted
water
to, we
report.
wanted to put in, remember we were looking to put the short-term rental
Yeah.
where we solicit a fee? Absolutely not. That is not allowed. You cannot solicit, so this is fine. We can put it in, but each year it has to be motioned. The board has to motion to put it in for these tax bills. The consumer report. Anything that goes in that tax bill has to be on a vote of the Board of Selectmen. Other than the tax bill, obviously, but
This has nothing to do with it. This is just telling us we can't do anything that includes a bill or anything like that. So
other than the tax bill.
other than the tax bill. So this motion here, the consumer confidence water report, can go in there. So I'm just making a motion to that. This is not relevant to that.
Okay, I just, we've never voted on this before.
I know.
Well, I think
And the
that,
Well,
consumer
now that I'm on
confidence.
the board, you have to go by
By
the
the
law, you
rules.
know.
well, to be honest, it's the first time I've seen it, but it was pointed out to us. This is the statute that says anything that goes into, basically anything that goes in that bill has to be on the approval of the Board of Selectmen. Consumer, and the consumer report's allowed.
Thanks to Tammy.
But
I
now,
wouldn't even know if she
now,
was there.
we talked about in this upcoming tax bill having a letter notice in there about the ordinance for short-term rentals, that they had to be registered.
But in that ordinance, we talk about the $50 filing fee, and you can't do that.
You can't do that. So even if it was a leash law, we can't
If
put
it
it
has a
out.
fine
Because-
attached to it,
Well,
if it has a fine
this is
attached, well, you can't.
policy. So policy, town policy, right? And it's saying, where's my interpretation?
It says, under no circumstances shall a city or town mail statements of position on matters of public policy. Well, we're
Yeah, I
not taking a
know,
position,
right.
we're not taking a position. If we've said you should vote for or against the proposed planning board ordinance, or you should vote for or against something, that's taking a position on the public policy. If we send out, here's a copy of our ordinance, I don't know. I would like to get some input from Peter before we do this, to be
I
honest.
think we did, didn't we, I think,
No, Tammy asked Kristen to find out, and she reached out to a tax collector in Lancaster. And she said, well, I'll send you the RSA for tax bills.
all right, so I stay corrected, so we can get this to Peter. But
And let's see it.
to cover what we need to do this month, which, and pretty soon is we need
This, yeah, by next week.
by next week, because the consumer report's gotta go in that tax.
We don't meet next week.
That's why we need a vote tonight.
Yeah, motion's on the
I'm
table.
fine for voting for this tonight.
But we
I guess I just really want input from
Yeah,
Peter.
because the short term,
Because as I read this, we don't need to vote yes tonight. This is not a bill, okay? And it says, any bills shall be mailed separately unless the governing body votes to mail it, include it with the tax bill. I'm fine for voting yes, but I don't think we need to. But
okay,
I'd like to find out
Well, it's up to
for
the board.
future.
but
And I'd also like to get his input on including the short-term rental. We talked about putting that letter in, informing people that they need to, that this is the ordinance, we've attached or included the ordinance. If it applies to you.
I agree, because a mailing is several $1,000s.
Yeah, it almost says that you can do it if the governing body, and it's related to municipal business, along with a tax bill. Included-
When are the tax bills going out?
Next week,
hopefully John's goal is to get them hopefully by the end of next week, everything's gonna be ready to go, paperwork I have, the mailer will have, and then give at least 2 weeks, he figures June
Because you got a
first.
holiday is
We
the end of
want
the
them
month,
to
so we
get,
really
yeah,
gotta meet.
so 17th, I think she said.
You
That's
got
the end of
month
this
June.
week.
You got the month of June for them to get there first.
17th is Monday.
Monday, okay, next week. So, well, this, if we want to include a short blurb, like here is the enacted short-term rental ordinance, da, 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 if we want to put anything in besides the ordinance itself,
I wouldn't think so, just,
Because I have the consumer confidence report,
which is how many pages?
working, I don't know, it might be 4 pages,
Oh my
which is a
God.
lot. They change, DES changes it.
there used to be a
So-
one-page,
Yeah, it's.
Oh, God. No. But, so I did the draft based on the information Dave Bowden gave me, so I just sent it to him today, so let's see if hopefully I can get it down to 3 pages. As far as what's required.
so if we
to
put in the
present.
ordinance, that's gonna be a 4th page, so it'll be four,
More than, yeah, I think the ordinance is 2 pages, I think.
right, we could do a front and back.
Okay, front and back.
Yeah, it's-
Will they allow us to do that? I mean,
oh, they don't care, because they're charging us.
the company that's stuffing the,
But we're stuffing them, right?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Goes out.
goodness, no.
I was gonna say, I can't, 3,000 envelopes, I would know.
No, we did that. for-
So let me
Planning.
Close the office down.
High school kids.
We did planning mailings that many, so.
Yeah, that was. But I'll find out, reach out to them tomorrow, the mail house, and so.
All right,
It'd be that big a deal, or,
all right, just in case we need it, we've had a motion and a second to include the consumer confidence report in the tax bill going out next month. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's unanimous. Sorry to cause trouble with that, but I just,
Maybe
No, it's a
overkill,
good
but we got it, it's clear now, yeah, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna, so we're done. Lisa has been meeting with Mark Gallant
yeah,
via Zoom for the Lupa online document. So after Lisa worked with Mark, one of the first things he explained is this would not be a document where it's part of our, he's not creating a
a fillable form online.
online. So basically, he's streamlined the process so people filling it out are forced to fill it out correctly, but it still has to be printed by them and then either delivered or rescanned to the town. So in that front end, he's taking care of it, but, we were all excited that it would be an online fillable thing and it would send, but that would require a lot more work on his part, and it would have to, the technology would have to match with our security coming in. So even he said that's beyond what he was proposing. So that's progressing. He's going to do that, and it's going to be complete. So at least online, if someone's filling it out, it will just not let them print it until it's, all the stuff that has to be filled out is filled out. And so that's not a small deal. That's a big step. That's a big
That's a
step.
big step.
That's a big
That's
step.
been a problem
Yep.
and it doesn't solve all of our problems, but it solves a significant one.
Yeah, so that's progressing.
I like that.
And the last thing I have is, as you know, 35 Goodwell Road, the Raymond Carril residence. He's constructed some properties, addition on his garage extends into a town right away, and the setbacks on a greenhouse or whatever he's done is also a violation. So Ron issued a cease and desist, formal cease and desist, actually today. That's gone out to him, and that he needs to correct the issue or see him in court. So that's the first cease and desist we've issued in some time, but we have a abbreviated form that we've run through town council, and so I suspect more are coming.
Can people, this question, because I obviously don't know the answer to it, can people come before the board board after the fact and ask retroactively for a zoning variance.
Yeah, yeah,
They have done that in the past.
they have done in the past.
So they have, so I mean, that's the first
This
step.
gentleman did that.
What's that?
This gentleman did that already. This gentleman on Good Boot Road, he built his house and deck on the front and was over and had to come to the ZBA and say, oops, I'm sorry, and get a variance. And then, even knowing the whole process, he then built onto the front of his garage without a permit, and then had to come back and see us again. And then after that, built the greenhouse onto the back of the garage, blatantly knowing that he was not doing it correctly. He just did it all anyway.
Did he get the permits for the first two?
But just the ZBA gave him the variance when he built the house. And put it
I
back.
thought you said he
Wait a minute. Tammy, say that again?
The ZBA granted him the variance when he built his house and put that deck on, because saying, oh, well, you didn't realize it. Now you know better. Don't do it again. And the deck was like 3 feet over the line on the corner. So, and it wasn't even not his line. It was 3 feet over the right of way on the corner. So it was not a big deal. And the ZBA said, fine, just don't do it again. But he never went in front of anybody for the addition he put on the front of the garage or the back of the garage.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Check your email on your phone. We did get that document that we talked about earlier.
Okay,
And thank you for drafting that cease and desist,
That was Carol that did a lot of the work.
Okay, well, obviously a lot of work went into that documenting. I mean, this isn't a 2-minute job. When we look at, the tie-up of our planning department,
From,
this is a lot of work.
excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
would have been Luker Daniel,
What is it?
Luker Daniel, Luker.
No? Dan Luker? Nope.
Huh.
I haven't got it yet, but it's relative to the landing?
Yep.
Okay, we were waiting for, signed, new declarations or, governing documents from the landing, which met all the requirements of the lawsuit and the sale of that land. And those just all signed, just came in today. So
Bless you.
we are good to go as far as issuing land use permits in the landing. And we understand that there is in excess of 20 commitments to property up there, so we're going to get busy.
There were
But
20
they just came in,
subject to AG's approval.
subject to AG approval, but it'd be a full court press now, so those just came in this afternoon. We've been waiting for them for most of the day, but they just came in.
That was from his attorney.
That was from
Excellent.
Texas.
And again, those are reservations.
Right.
So the real estate transactions still have to
Be made.
go
and-
through.
PNSs.
And I'm assuming not a lot of them have already hired an engineer to design a house
We know of
on a lot they don't own yet, but, so it'll take time, but they will.
One survey, Saborn and Tower were in and told us they've been contracted for 6 lots up there. to
Okay,
Do the lot surveying for lots, so.
It'll take time.
It'll take time, but it's
But they're
moving.
coming.
It's moving, it's coming, yep.
It's good to see that project's getting going again.
Well, no, it really is. I mean,
It is.
that was a project that really got slowed down with the bankruptcy case and then the bankruptcy trustee suing the
Yeah,
town.
Yeah, I really appreciate Mr. Lynch, the new owner of the landing. Actually, he reached out to the fire marshal's office and got the details on how to go about wording it correctly in his new covenants to have the requirement of an FPA 13D sprinkler system and all the homes going forward up there. So,
so he's been extremely
He's been-
cooperative, and
yeah, proactive.
I want to echo Ron's, publicly thank him for,
Good.
he's really stepped up.
Well, that's good. I mean, that was the right person to be buying that and developing that, and
Yeah.
it's good to see that moving forward cooperatively with the town instead of non-cooperatively.
He's got, what, 3 cisterns up there, you said, Ron?
He has 3 installed and tested, that's correct.
They're all meet our requirements.
Does that meet the requirements, or was there 4?
It was 4, but he, with the 13D residential sprinkler systems, which will incorporate a 300-gallon bladder pump system in the basement of each home, because they are pores, so it'll lessen the demand on the pump system that supplies the domestic to the homes.
Mm-hmm.
And the basis of design for a 13D is to buy the occupants time to get out, but also hopefully knock the fire down at its incipient stage and do less damage than we will do when we show up with big fire hoses. So, and you know, it's well received for me. You know, I mean, obviously the state of New Hampshire hasn't moved in the direction to allow municipalities to require that. So for a developer to take that step, that I really appreciate it.
Good, that's good to hear.
That's all I have.
All right. There's a couple of things in the folder here. One is just the report from DRA on the assessed value of the town. And they do, this is the equalized assessed valuation is $1,148,101,483 for the town of Lincoln. So we're up over the $1 billion mark.
By $80 million, up $40 million.
Wait, by 148 million.
Hmm.
1,148 million.
What was it last year, do we know?
It was under
It was under $1 billion,
This is not-
8 something. Yeah,
989
Yeah.
or something.
980.
980 something.
Yeah.
So we also got a report from the DOT on their policies and procedures for emergency road closures, town road inventory, driveway permits, excavation permits, parade permits, and sponsor a highway program. So that's just
Just updated.
general
guidance, yeah.
information on their policies. I don't need to go over that anymore.
Yeah.
Couple of things I had is the library. Do we know if they're looking at opening up to public or what they're?
I asked Carol, and I believe that trustees are going to discuss it.
Ron's got some information.
Yeah, they're gonna have a meeting and discuss it.
Yeah, so
Will they have it before our next board meeting 2 weeks from tonight, do you know?
I think so.
I'll check.
See if they can give the board an update.
Yep.
You know, I don't think we need to necessarily weigh in or make any comments before their meeting. But I've had people ask me, you know, what's up, when it's gonna open, other places have been open, and I just wanted to see if they were considering it, meeting, whatever, but if they can just report. We had a discussion last week about the proposed contract from Skip Sansucci on the assessment, adding the assessment of Loon Mountain to the utilities contract. That was forwarded to us. I mean, it wasn't
It was a
an
letter.
addition, a letter
I called it
talking
a
about
contract,
an
right?
amendment to the current contract. Basically, it's gonna cost us $11,000 to enter into that contract
The first year,
for the first year.
and then there was a
Every
what,
year.
19,000 the second year, was it?
No, the current contract is 8,000.
Right.
Okay, for the utilities.
For the utilities, right? Okay,
The new contract with Loon Mountain will be 19,000.
okay.
So it's an
that's-
additional 11 to do Loon Mountain.
Okay,
And I believe is it a year-by-year contract we do with him? or is
I
it
believe it
3
is
year?
Yeah, that was yearly.
yearly, that's yearly,
Oh, it is, the price is yearly, but I didn't know how often we updated the contract.
every 5 years.
I say, I thought it was,
That sounds about
I
right.
thought it was multiple
Every
years. So
5 years.
the $11,000 will be each year until the end of this contract term, and I don't know how many more years are left on this
I
contract.
think this current contract is I think it's ending in 22. So it's like one more year on it, and then
And then
it would
it'll be
pick
a new
up.
contract.
Yeah.
So we had some discussion on this last week. Tamara and Jack, what's your thoughts or pleasure with this?
I guess I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Loon Mountain is already evaluated under the current assessing contract.
Correct.
So this is an additional 11,000 we're putting on the taxpayer.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, obviously the goal, if you do something like that, is you've got to hit them in the pocketbook to recoup that from the assessment that's done.
That would be the premise of the,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
Of
think
the,
you have to, what you have to, in this.
He's an
board, at least
expert in the field.
He's an
I
expert in
saw
the
his
field,
resume.
and this board has said they want it to be fair. And I guess what your board has to determine is, CMP, who's doing our current ones, by their admission, they do different methodology in assessing businesses, and they don't necessarily get into the minutia of certain businesses and what Skip has taken on with ski resorts and open mines. You know, excavating is a niche industry now that he takes a look at. And in some cases, towns and cities lose in taxation because they've been taxing something that shouldn't have been, but in other cases, he gets into stuff. So that's where it goes. He admitted up front to me on the phone that this wasn't gonna be less expensive. He said that right up front. He said, don't let the board, and the board will quickly see that it's not, but that wouldn't know until they get into it. He is working in conjunction with whoever our assessor is now at CMP. So it's not in lieu of, but in conjunction with, because there's parts of Loon, as I understand it, some mill stuff that would still fall within our normal assessing. But he gets into the machinery and into the nuts and bolts of operation of it. So I guess from the town plans, and I'll stop, but if the town's not unhappy with the current assessing of a major industry like Burndy's or Loon, if you're okay with that, then maybe, but if you had doubts as to whether we were getting the correct, and again, being fair, if we're getting the tax dollars we should out of the operation, then I think Skip would be your guy, so.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I'm looking at the proposal right now. And this, the scope of work includes ski area lifts, land, lodge buildings, ticket office, lifting and dola buildings, cafe, office buildings, pavilion, competition center, service and maintenance shop, and any other taxable structures and purchases necessary for the ski resort and all taxable site improvements. And these are for annual pickups for the years 22, 23, 24, and 25. And it's an additional $11,000 per year, which means we'd have to get an additional $11,000 of tax dollars out of Loon Mountain just to break even with this. And what I see coming from that is lawsuits.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, I don't know about lawsuits, but, I think if it ain't fixed, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I mean, if you're unhappy now, you folks have been longer than I have. If you're unhappy with the current assessor, then change. If you're not, if you're happy with what you have, why make the change? I mean, the other thing is too, I'm sure there are people out there whose sole practice is to evaluate hotels and motels and specialty buildings like that. I mean, do we start pigeonholing the different entities around?
Water parks.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. You took it up.
You're right. No, you're right.
Or train beer shows. I mean, things like that. You know what I'm saying? So consequently, I said my spiel. If it ain't fixed,
And I think
don't
that's
fix
the key.
Yeah.
If they're really not unhappy, then
Well,
That was a good name.
it is, and I think that the fairness, again, our goal is to be fair at this.
Right.
Comerford Nita Perkins assesses that number, $1.15 billion worth of real estate in this town. So you know that they do a very broad scope, using averages of square footage, of acreage, of frontage, they do a broad scope look. What they don't do is have a appraisal done of each piece of property where they're going in and they really appraise it and get some comp sales, and they don't do that detailed thing. They do a broad scope thing. And like you said, okay, if we're gonna then take, is it $17 million of appraised value that's included in Loon right now, that they're gonna scrutinize with a microscope, then why aren't we doing that for other, $10, $20 million properties, like a water park, like a hotel?
Yeah, restaurants, breweries.
Yeah, I
And I
I don't
think,
think that adds to I don't think that makes it more fair than just including them and hotels and breweries and malls and in the broad scope assessment process.
yeah, and I think sitting on this a while, I mean, I will almost guarantee you that 2 years down the line, your views change, he'll be available. And that's-
Absolutely.
You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? And
Yeah.
I know he confided me that he has 1 or 2 ski resorts in New Hampshire and I believe Vermont under contract now. So there'll be a lot of data being generated, and that you can watch to see what happens.
Let's take
Exactly.
the see what happens view.
Yeah.
So,
And two, I mean, the current company that we have, whom it sounds like you're satisfied with, I mean, they can always hire him as a subcontractor without increasing us, us having a separate contractor.
Yeah, I think my read between the lines is they couldn't afford it.
they couldn't afford them. They said if we took this off of his plate, off of their plate and subbed it out to him, that our reduction in price is $100 or a couple $100.
Yeah.
And his cost is 11,000.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so it's a totally different assessing number.
Um,
That's it. I think.
Paul, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a big difference here between what the assessment is between land and buildings versus what the assessment is between land, buildings, and whatever else is on the property. So if you're going to sell something, you're going to sell it land, buildings, and whatever else is on the property, ski lifts, water slide park, whatever, rides, whatever. So there is a big difference in that. And I think that's something that you have to consider. When other people are assessed, they're assessed on land and buildings. But most people don't have other things on their property that are of value. So when people go to sell their property, they take advantage truly of everything that they have, including all the other amenities that are on the property. That was my only comment.
And I think we have to remember that what the town is assessing and allowed to tax on is real property, not personal property. Whether that's a house or a ski resort, or a water park. I mean, we can't tax the real,
Correct.
the personal property of a water park or a hotel or a ski resort. So although all of that would be included in what you're calling a purchase price, it's not real estate. There's other aspects to the purchase price. So again, I think that they're doing a fair job as part of the broad scope, and I don't see any reason to change it. So I'll make the motion that we continue to have Comerford Nita Perkins assess everything in town except for the utilities.
And I'll notify San Souzi's office tomorrow that thanks for the offer. but
Yeah, and-
We're gonna pass.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, a second, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And that's a unanimous vote.
OJ, I'm sorry, you have to excuse me for just a minute, but I'll be right back.
Yep.
And in non-public, we should go in and one quick update, since our meeting this afternoon in legal, I've
There's-
got more info I want to just
Okay.
update the board on.
And I just want to
Yep.
regroup and talk about that as a board without
Yep.
the attorneys here.
Yep.
I had whatever.
Yep.
We'll do that. I also had wanted to get an update on one personnel issue.
Yep.
Did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
No.
All right, Tamara's not here. I will open up for public comment if there's anything. Paul?
Yeah, I have a couple for you tonight, OJ. One is, I was listening to you talk about the fees at the solid waste facility and updating those based on charges and what it's costing you to get rid of stuff. And I didn't hear anything about the trees, limbs and brush. That's a very big charge to the town that the town pays for and doesn't get reimbursed for. And I was wondering if you were going to look at that as well.
I believe the two boards discussed that at a joint meeting at our last discussion of fees. And both boards agreed to not charge for it. So no, we didn't discuss that at this meeting, but we did it the last time we discussed fees.
If you're gonna bring up the other things, would it not be appropriate at this time to take a look at that as well?
Nate didn't mention it, but it's up to you guys.
I mean, if it was 3 years ago that we discussed it, yes, I would. Since it was the very last time that we talked about the fee schedule, we adopted a whole bunch of stuff and we discussed pretty extensively what fees and charges, and it's not that we ignored that. We discussed brush and it was agreed to not charge for it. So, you know, unless they bring it up, I don't see any need for it, no.
Well, I guess my point, OJ, is the taxpayers that it's being subsidized by taxpayers when it should be paid for by people who are using it. And you have the ability to be able to do that based on all of the tonnage that was taken out and accounted for when they chipped it and hauled it. You have a record of that. And you know what the cost is per ton to get rid of that, or per pound, you can break it down. So to run that over the scale would seem to make some sort of difference, at least to be able to get, I mean, even if I bring stuff down, brush, and I brought some down today. I mean, I don't see why there's not the ability to break down what it costs you to have the chipper come in, and they know how they charge you by how many tons of chips went out. And that, from my understanding, that's how it was charged, and you should be able to break that down and get some sort of a, you know, I'm not saying you got to account for any penny of it, but I mean, there should be a charge for that so that the taxpayers don't have to pay for that. And the people who are generating it, myself and others, can pay for it. And that's what you're saying about the mattresses and everything else. So I would think that the trees, limbs and brush could probably be looked at as well. I mean, Nate has made this comment, and it just seems like it would be appropriate at this time when you're looking at other things to take a look at that as well.
I will ask,
It's just a recommendation, that's all.
Can I speak? This is Jane.
Yep, go ahead, Jane.
Oh, thank you. Unless you met with them prior, I remember our last meeting was that they were going to measure the brush and see if it was worth the while to do that. I didn't know you had decided, you must have since then decided upon not charging folks for it. I agree with Paul in that it's just another additional expense put on the taxpayer's back. And it's not something that they should have to do or we should have to handle. People who put their brush there is from lawn keepers, from all kinds of professional people. They can charge the folks who they're taking it from and get their money that way. So we're not, it isn't that they're not going to get any money, just add it to additional bill. But I think so much is put on the taxpayers' back, even when you were just talking about the $11,000, that I agree with Paul. If there's things up there they're going to sell with their house, that's going to increase the value of the house. But again, we're not going to get that $11,000. I don't understand why myself. So as where the brush is concerned, I definitely believe that it should be paid for by those people who bring their brush down.
There'll probably be an additional 10-minute conversation at the combined meeting, so.
All right, Jack?
Jane, that's the first time in 3 years I've ever heard you say you agree with Paul. Anyways, Paul, you bring up a good point. I have a question for you. How would we measure, the person that brings down 2 barrels full of leaves or brings down 2 small barrels full of brush, in the back of a pickup truck or something like that? I'm not talking commercial. I'm just talking. And I agree with the concept, maybe there's a commercial rate, or maybe we tax everybody, I don't know. But how would you measure that, Paul?
Well, Jack, I guess I would say you already have a way to measure it. You have one scale on the outside, and it doesn't go down that small, but you also have a smaller scale on the inside that you weigh TVs and things like that with electronics. So you could even break it down that much, but the way you're doing it right now with a minimum charge could possibly be implemented with construction, because right now you have a minimum charge for construction. So you could have a minimum charge for brush. It could be small. And like I said, I don't think you need to look at garnering every penny back, but at least to get some of it certainly would help the town.
No, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
like Jane said about, taxing people. I mean, if we can offset expenses, obviously, again, that's a burden that's going to fall back on the taxpayers in one form or another. It doesn't fall on everybody because not everybody dumps brush down there. But by the same token, some people more than others that have property that have tree limbs and things like that. But I think that maybe we talk about it between the 2 boards. It's a combined, waste facility that's not operated and funded by both boards, and see how Woodstock feels.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think you have some of the documentation as to what it costs you to get rid of the last time when they came in and shipped, because they charged you I believe by the ton, and the trucks were weighed. So you have an idea of what it costs you per ton of truck that went out there. So if you can break that down, you have a price per ton, and you can go from there to the pound or whatever you want to do. Like I said, you don't have to get back everything, but it certainly would be nice to get some of it back so that the taxpayers who aren't generating it don't have to pay for it.
No, I mean, I'd say the same thing that like the commercial properties in town,
You shouldn't have. to.
like, and I'm not picking on restaurants or anything, that dump a lot more items that aren't recyclable into the waste pit there. And I've seen the trucks in there with their logos on them, so I know that they come there. I mean, I'm paying the same tax that they're paying on my property. Do we start charging for commercial properties that dump there? Again, food stuffs and, rotten food and things like that. But anyways.
But I think there's, as Paul says, and I can't quote it, but I'll get Nate working on it
I
tomorrow.
was like, can you get Nate
I'll
to
make
be
work
prepared
on-
to talk about this then?
And then he'll be prepared to talk
All right.
to you guys, but I think there's already minimum, and I can't quote it, Paul may know off the top of his head, but there's already minimum weight things
Get-
established already that probably would fit the small
Some
pickup
criteria.
full of brush, wouldn't even trip the minimum
Yeah,
fee.
there's a minimum fee for dumping lumber.
But we can look at that,
construction.
I'll have him look into that, so he'll be ready.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you for that. And the only other question I have for you tonight was, does the water tank info that you were talking about tonight mean that South Peak will not have to install a water tank in order to move on?
We're not saying that, no.
No, we're not saying
No.
that.
Okay,
No.
all right. I was just listening. I caught some of it. I had to go out and I came back, but I was just, it seemed like because it wasn't going to be on South Peak property, but yet it was going to address the pressure concerns and the concerns about future building, that maybe it was not going to have to be as part of the original agreement between South Peak and the town.
Yeah, no, the goal would not be to do it so that South Peak didn't have to build their tank.
Okay,
It would either be a cooperative effort, which would make more sense,
Right.
or dual tanks if they refuse to. You know, they're legally bound to fulfill the conditions of approval.
but, right, and that was kind of like my concern, so if South Peak says, we're not thinking that we gotta do this, but the town says, you know what, we're gonna push forward, and we're gonna go with this other tank location, they get it no matter what, and they don't have to pay for anything, so it seemed, that was my concern.
Yeah. We're working on that.
Yeah,
Okay, all right,
that's not our intent. Our intent is to either work with them or separately just enforce the conditions of approval.
All right.
okay,
That was my concern also. Actually, I heard Monday's meeting and I was thinking about working collaboratively and negating. I was thinking maybe you're going to negate the 2006 tank that they're obligated by contract to put in. And that was a little concerning to me. Even if we're asking taxpayers to pay for that, any of that would be concerning to me. It's a poor and they have an obligation to fulfill that. That's my,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Jane, you schooled me well. I agree with you. The taxpayer shouldn't pay a dime for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else in public?
I'm all set, OJ, thank you very much.
Well, I'll make the motion to go into non-public to discuss the legal issue that we had a meeting with our attorneys today and update on a personnel issue from a couple of weeks ago.
Second that motion.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right,